is being recorded. Cette conférence est enregistrée. Heads up.
There's the coward of the cottage.
Hello everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Ce matin, je veux m'adresser aux millions de Canadiens
I'd like
qui
to
font des
address
choix
the millions of
responsables
Canadians who are
pour
making
s'assurer
responsible
leur
decisions
sécurité et
to
celle de
ensure
leurs
their
proches.
safety and the safety
Je
of
sais
their
que cette
loved ones.
pandémie est frustrante.
I know that this pandemic has been frustrating.
After 2 years, the battle against COVID-19 is still dominating so many parts of our lives. This virus affects us all. 2 of my own children have now contracted it, and this morning I learned I tested positive for COVID-19 as well. I feel well and have no symptoms. Of course, I'll be working remotely this week, and we'll keep following public health guidelines. I want to take this opportunity to remind Canadians to please get vaccinated. It's a challenge that my family and I are facing, but there's nothing unusual or special about it. It's a challenge too many Canadians and people around the world know all too well. Durant cette pandémie, il y a des gens qui ont perdu des êtres chers.
Throughout this pandemic,
Nos
people
travailleurs
have
de la
lost
santé
loved ones.
continuent de faire un
Our
travail
healthcare
acharné.
workers are
Les
continuing to
scientifiques
work very
travaillent
hard.
jour et nuit pour
Scientists are
s'assurer
working
qu'on
day
ait
and
des
night
vaccins pour se
to ensure
protéger.
that we can get vaccines to keep us
This
safe.
pandemic is not over, and we have to be there for one another. And as we continue to have each other's backs, as we steel ourselves for the challenges ahead, I know you're wondering about what you saw in our capital city this weekend. As my friend Erwin Kotler said on Saturday, freedom of expression, assembly, and association are cornerstones of democracy, but Nazi symbolism, racist imagery, and desecration of war memorials are not. It is an insult to memory and truth. Hate can never be the answer. Over the past few days, Canadians were shocked and frankly disgusted by the behavior displayed by some people protesting in our nation's capital. I want to be very clear. We are not intimidated by those who hurl insults and abuse at small business workers and steal food from the homeless. We won't give in to those who fly racist flags. We won't cave to those who engage in vandalism or dishonor the memory of our veterans. La statue de Terry Fox et la tombe du soldat
The
inconnu
statue of Terry Fox and the tomb of the unknown soldier are not only
Ce sont des
symbols of the
points
past.
marquants de notre histoire qui
They are
représentent des
important
héros
symbols
canadiens
from our
et
history
les
that represent
valeurs
Canadian
pour
heroes
lesquelles ils se
and
sont
the
battus.
values for which they fought.
Les sacrifices de ces héros
The
nous ont
sacrifices
donné
that
la
these
chance de
heroes
bâtir un
made
Canada
allowed
meilleur.
us to build a better
Tous
Canada.
les Canadiens ont le droit
All
d'exprimer leur
Canadians have the
opinion ou
right
leur
to express
désaccord
their
avec leur
opinion
gouvernement.
or their
Ils
disagreement
n'ont
with the
pas le
government.
droit de menacer ou de harceler leurs concitoyens
or
ni de
harass
propager
their
des
fellow
messages
citizens
de haine.
or to spread hateful messages.
I want to thank the many Canadians who've made donations to the Shepherds of Good Hope and to the Terry Fox Foundation in response to what they saw this weekend. There is no place in our country for threats, violence, or hatred. So to those responsible for this behavior, it needs to stop. To anyone who joined the convoy but is rightly uncomfortable with the symbols of hatred and division on display, join with your fellow Canadians. Be courageous and speak out. Do not stand for or with intolerance and hate. En ces temps difficiles, tous les politiciens doivent
In these
démontrer
difficult
du
times,
leadership
all politicians
responsable.
need to show responsible
On doit
leadership.
travailler pour rassembler les gens
We need
de
to
manière
work to
positive.
bring people together in
On
a
doit
positive
lutter
way.
contre la division
We need
et
to
la peur
fight division and
avec
fear
les faits.
with facts.
To the politicians exploiting people's fears, I ask you to think long and hard about the consequences of your actions. To the nearly 90% of truckers across the country who've gotten vaccinated, who continue working hard to keep us fed and keep our economy moving, thank you. Truckers have tough jobs. Long hours on the road, days away from their families. Real challenges, particularly over the past 2 years, as they've continued to step up to put food on our shelves and on our tables, to support us with life-saving medication and supplies. We have relied on you, and you can rely on us to continue to stand with you and allow you to do your jobs safely. Almost 90% of you are doing exactly that. And we thank you deeply for everything you've done. The behavior on display this weekend does not represent you. And to Canadians at home, watching in disgust and disbelief at this behavior, wondering how this could have happened in our nation's capital after everything we've been through together, this is not the story of our pandemic, of our country, of our people. Canada is strong because you are strong. Pendant près de 2 ans, les Canadiens
For
ont
nearly
fait
2
preuve de
years,
force,
Canadians have
de
shown
générosité
strength,
et de
generosity,
respect.
and respect.
Vous avez démontré votre
You've
courage.
shown your courage.
Vous avez fait
You've
d'énormes
made huge
sacrifices.
sacrifices.
For nearly 2 years, you've been there for each other as neighbors, friends, and fellow Canadians. I think of the moms and dads who looked after their families, the kids who stepped up in so many different ways, seniors who stayed strong in our darkest days, volunteers throughout our communities who supported our most vulnerable, frontline workers from truckers to store clerks who've kept our shelves stocked and made sure we have food on our tables, healthcare heroes who've saved countless lives and continue to do so. We know you're tired, and yet you do not stop. You inspire us. Canadians support you. We're in your corner. All of you are the story of this pandemic, not the convoy. Cette pandémie, c'est aussi l'histoire de millions de personnes qui ont fait les bons choix, qui se sont fait vacciner et qui ont fait des sacrifices pour assurer leur sécurité et celle des autres. Je peux vous dire que je vais continuer d'encourager les gens à se faire vacciner, que ce soit pour les doses de rappel ou les vaccins pour les enfants. Je vais continuer d'être là pour vous.
I will continue to be there for you.
I wish I could tell you that there are no more difficult moments ahead. But we all know I can't say that. What I can say is that this government will continue to have your backs. We will continue to be there for you as long as it takes, with as much as it takes. That's how we've all gotten through this pandemic so far, and that's what we and I will continue to focus on. Because we believe in you. Canadians are compassionate, kind, strong, and resilient. You elected us all to get big things done, and with the return of Parliament, we all have work to do. Later today, I'll be participating in question period, an important part of our democratic system, alongside parliamentarians who, despite threats and intimidation, will continue to serve you, Canadians, and work together to deliver results for people. This afternoon, we'll be introducing legislation to ensure we continue providing as many rapid tests as possible to the provinces and territories. And tonight, I'll be virtually addressing the House of Commons about the situation in Ukraine. I'll be talking about the importance of freedom, democracy, and the rule of law in the face of Russian provocation. In this difficult time, more than ever, we must stay true to our values, to who we are as Canadians. As Canadians, we stand up for what's right, and mostly, we stand up for each other. That's how we've gotten through this so far. That's how we'll continue to get through this. That's how we remain true to who we are. Merci, mes amis.
Thank you, friends.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll now start the question period for 20 minutes, starting with the phone today. Opératrice, c'est à vous.
Thank you, merci. Please press star one at this time if you have a question. S'il vous plaît, appuyez sur l'étoile 1 maintenant pour poser une question. The first question is from Mia Rodson, the Canadian Press. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm wondering, a lot of the leaders or organizers of this convoy have asked to meet or at least hear from you about what's happening in their demands. Have you or will you or anyone from your government meet with them or negotiate with them in any way?
My focus is standing with Canadians and getting through this pandemic. The way to get through this pandemic is to continue making the challenging choices and sacrifices as citizens, as individuals, as communities, to keep each other safe, to trust science, to trust facts, to continue being there for each other. That is my focus. That is what I will stay focused on.
Can you explain the reason why you won't participate or meet with them? I mean, you've attended rallies on the Hill in the past, including during the Black Lives Matter protest and others. Is there a reason that you can give as for why you will not discuss or have any negotiations with this particular group?
I have attended protests and rallies in the past when I agreed with the goals, when I supported the people expressing their concerns and their issues. Black Lives Matter is an excellent example of that. But I have also chosen to not go anywhere near protests that have expressed hateful rhetoric, violence towards fellow citizens, and a disrespect not just of science, but of the frontline health workers and, quite frankly, the 90% of truckers who have been doing the right thing to keep Canadians safe, to put food on our tables. Canadians know where I stand. This is a moment for responsible leaders to think carefully about where they stand and who they stand with.
Opératrice, prochaine question.
Next question.
Thank you. Merci. La prochaine question est de Laurence Martin,
The next question is from Laurence Martin from Radio-Canada.
Oui, bonjour, M. Trudeau. Je me demandais comment
Yes,
est-ce que
good
vous allez
morning, Mr.
faire
Trudeau.
pour apaiser la grogne
What are you going to do to appease some of the backlash that we've seen in Ottawa in recent days? You've said that some people have been violent and aggressive, but many people have not. So what are you going to do to appease their anger?
Tout le monde à travers le pays, qu'il soit ici à Ottawa ou non,
First of all, I think that everyone across the country,
tout le monde a de la grogne,
in
tout le
Ottawa or
monde
elsewhere,
est cette pandémie.
is frustrated.
Tout le monde est
Everyone is
épuisé,
sick
tout le
of
monde
this
veut que ça en
pandemic.
finisse.
Everyone is tired. Everyone wants
Tout
to
le
be
monde
done with
voudrait
it.
bien qu'on puisse dire, OK, c'est fini,
Everyone would
puis
love
on
to be able to say,
à
okay,
ce qu'on
it's
à ce qu'on
over,
voudrait faire.
and move on.
Mais la vaste
But
majorité
the
des
vast
Canadiens
majority of Canadians
savent que c'est pas en rouspétant
know
qu'on va finir
that
cette pandémie,
that's not how we can end
c'est en
this
se faisant
pandemic.
vacciner.
The way out of this
C'est
pandemic
en
is getting
écoutant
vaccinated.
les meilleurs conseils de santé publique.
It's listening to public health
Et
advice.
la meilleure façon qu'on va pouvoir passer à travers,
And the best
la
way
meilleure façon qu'on va pouvoir continuer d'être
to
là les
get out
uns
of
pour
this
les autres, c'est
pandemic and to
justement
continue to be there for each
en
other
démontrant qu'on comprend
is to
l'importance
show that we
de
understand
suivre la
the
science,
importance of
les
following science,
faits, les experts
facts,
en santé,
and health
les
experts.
experts en santé publique. C'est comme ça qu'on va sortir de cette pandémie.
That's how we'll get out of this pandemic.
Et c'est sur ça que je vais me concentrer.
And that's what I'm going to focus on. A follow-up question?
Certains vous accusent d'avoir politisé
Some
la
people have
question de la
accused you of
vaccination
politicizing the
obligatoire
question
durant la
of
campagne
mandatory
électorale.
vaccination
Qu'est-ce que vous
during
répondez à ceux qui
the
disent
election
que porter
campaign.
une partie de la
What would you say to those who say that you share part of the responsibility for the anger that we've
Les
seen over this issue?
Canadiens ont choisi de se faire vacciner
Canadians
à un taux plus
chose to
élevé
get vaccinated,
que presque
and they
n'importe
did
quel
so at a
autre
higher
pays
rate than in
dans le
almost
monde.
any other country in the world.
On a vu à chaque étape
At every
les
step,
Canadiens choisir
we have
d'être là
seen
les uns pour les
Canadians
autres.
choosing to be there for each
En
other.
plus d'avoir un taux de vaccination plus élevé que beaucoup
Not only
de
do
nos
we have a
pays
higher
frères,
vaccination rate than many of our peer
on a
countries,
aussi pu protéger et notre système de santé
we've also been able
et
to protect
nos
our
aînés,
healthcare system
et
and our seniors,
voir rebondir notre économie de la
and
bonne
we've been
façon.
able to get our economy
Je
going
comprends qu'il y a
in the right
certaines
way.
personnes qui choisissent de rejeter la science,
I understand that there are some
choisissent
people
de
who choose to
rejeter
reject science,
l'entraide
who
et le
choose to
service et les
reject
sacrifices que font la
the
vaste
sacrifice
majorité des
that might be
Canadiens.
required to
Mais
help
c'est leur
our fellow citizens.
Mon choix,
But
c'est de
that's their
continuer
choice.
d'être là
My choice
pour les
is to continue to be
90%
there
des
for the
Canadiens
90% of
qui,
Canadians
oui, sont tannés,
who are fed up with
mais
this
qui savent
pandemic,
que la
but
façon qu'on va
who
passer à
know that
travers,
the way out of it
c'est en restant solidaires, en se
is
respectant les uns
by
les autres
standing in solidarity with each
et
other,
en suivant
showing
les
respect
les
for each
consignes
other,
de
and
santé.
following public health advice.
Operator, next question.
Thank you. Merci. The next question is from Tom Perry from CBC News. Please go ahead.
Hi, Prime Minister. Thanks for taking our questions. Supporters of this movement will say that it's a small minority of people in this protest who are causing trouble. So is it fair to focus in on the obviously terrible behavior of some and paint all protesters with that brush?
I think, obviously, the right to free expression, the right to assembly, the right to make your displeasure known in a democracy is extraordinarily important and needs to be heeded and respected. But there have been many, many protests over the past years that I've seen, that I've been part of, that I've watched from a distance on Parliament Hill and elsewhere, where people come together angry about a certain thing, wanting something else to change, that don't see the level of hateful rhetoric, of swastikas, of abuse towards their fellow citizens. There is always a right to protest peacefully that I and others will defend fully as part of this democracy. There is not a right
It's a fucking dictator.
to incite violence, to perform acts of violence, or to spew hatred. And I think anyone who is part of this group who is disgusted by what the folks protesting alongside are doing needs to step up and take responsibility, condemn these actions, and look for other ways to express their displeasure.
Following up.
You talk about politicians exploiting people's fears. Who are you talking about, and what impact do you think they're having?
I think all politicians need to think very carefully about who they're supporting, about what messages they're putting out. We have seen over the past many, many months conservative politicians sharing disinformation about vaccines, encouraging conspiracy theories online, And I think Aaron O'Toole is going to need to reflect very carefully on how he's walking a path that supports these people who do not represent truckers, let alone the vast majority of Canadians.
Operator, next question.
Thank you. Merci. La prochaine question de Boris Proulx, Le Devoir.
Next question is from Le Devoir.
Merci, Monsieur le Premier ministre.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
Faire quelconque concession aux camionneurs?
Do you intend to make any concessions to these truckers?
Les défis auxquels on est en train de faire face dans nos chaînes
challenges that we're
d'approvisionnement
facing in terms of supply
sont pas
chains
dus aux politiques
are
de
not
vaccination,
due to
mais sont dus
vaccination policies.
à la COVID-19.
They're due to
La
COVID-19.
meilleure façon de passer à travers ces
The
moments
best way
difficiles pour les
to get
camionneurs,
through
pour
this difficult
tous les
time
Canadiens,
for truckers and for all
c'est en
Canadians
continuant de respecter les
is to
consignes de santé
continue
publique,
to follow
en
public health
continuant de se
advice,
faire vacciner comme
continue
presque
to get
90%
vaccinated,
des
as nearly
camionneurs
90%
l'ont
of
fait.
truckers already have,
C'est sur ça que je vais me
and
concentrer.
to focus on
Pas
those
sur
priorities.
ces manifestants qui ne
I'm not going to
respectent
focus
pas
on the
les faits,
protesters who
la science,
don't respect science,
ni, pour plusieurs, nos principes
evidence,
démocratiques.
or in some cases, our democratic principles. Follow-up
Merci.
question?
En suivi, des
Yes.
manifestants disaient que le Canada était à l'origine de
The protesters are saying
la vaccination obligatoire
that Canada was at the root. Canada had pressured the Biden administration to implement
Depuis les
vaccination
débuts,
mandates for truckers
on
on
m'a
their
souvent
side as well.
posé des
Can you
questions
tell us if that's the case?
L'alignement ou le
Answer.
non-alignement entre nos politiques ici au
From the
Canada
beginning of the pandemic, I've
par rapport aux
answered a lot of
frontières
questions
avec
about
les Américains.
whether our
Il y a eu des
policies were
choses sur
aligned
lesquelles on
with
s'est aligné,
the
on s'est très bien
Americans or
travaillé. Il y a eu
not.
d'autres choses
Now, there are
sur
some
lesquelles
situations
on est
where we
moins
were very
alignés.
well aligned
Mais à
with the
chaque
US
fois,
and we worked very closely
je
together, and in
démontrais
other
et
cases,
j'insistais
that was less
que chaque
so.
pays peut
But I
et
have
doit
always
faire ses
insisted
propres
that each
décisions par
country
rapport
had
à
to
sa
make its own
sécurité publique. Mais
decisions
évidemment,
in terms of
puisque
protecting
nous
its own security.
suivons la même science,
But obviously,
et
since
le même genre de conseil
the U.S.
d'experts, ça doit
administration
pas
and
être
our government are
surprenant
following the
que
same
les mêmes
scientific advice,
principes sont en
it shouldn't
jeu,
be a surprise
quand on amène des
that
mesures pour
the
protéger les
same
citoyens.
types of policies are in place to protect
Operator, next
citizens.
question.
Thank you. Merci. The next question from Tanda McCharles, Toronto Star. Please go ahead.
Prime Minister, you said that Aaron O'Toole has to think carefully, but he did meet with some truckers on Friday. Do you think that was an inappropriate gesture of support to truckers, or specifically about anyone else in terms of his caucus, and can you speak to Messenger's participation?
As part of our job as politicians, every single day, we make decisions about who to meet with, who to respond to, how to respond to them, who to engage with, how not just our engagements, but our example impacts on public discourse. If we choose to put up with and tacitly support conspiracy theorists and folks peddling disinformation, that's a reflection on what we choose to do as politicians and who we are as leaders. Obviously, I'm going to trust in Canadians' understanding of the kind of responsible leadership that is needed right now. And I'm sure Canadians are watching what all politicians are doing right now and remembering who is choosing to stand up for what and for whom, and what choices they are making as leaders. I think through this pandemic, Canadians have seen and have a right to expect responsible leadership. And unfortunately, that's not what we've always seen from the likes of Aaron O'Toole or even more, Maxime Bernier.
Following up.
Given the behavior you outlined today, what do you want to see the security forces on Parliament Hill and in downtown Ottawa do about the situation?
Well, first of all, I'd like to make sure that people are safe, first and foremost, that small businesses, restaurants in Ottawa can get back to work. that citizens can go to their jobs, that parliamentarians can continue to do the important work of serving Canadians, of upholding our democracy. Yes, there is a right to protest. There is a right to make your voices heard loudly and clearly. There is not a right to shut down our democracy or our democratic processes. There is not a right to abuse, intimidate, and harass your fellow citizens who are trying to go about their business, trying to live their lives, and not necessarily in agreement with what you are doing.
Opératrice, prochaine question.
Thank you. Merci. La prochaine question, Raphaël Pirot.
The next question is from Raphaël Pirot.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau. Je voulais
Yes,
savoir.
good afternoon, Mr. Trudeau.
Donc, le ministre des Transports avait dit récemment.
The Minister of Transport recently said
il n'avait pas dit clairement, mais peut-être aller de l'avant
that he
avec
wanted
l'obligation
to
vaccinale
perhaps
pour les
move forward
camionneurs,
with a vaccination mandate
Est-ce que c'est quelque chose
for
que votre gouvernement,
truckers traveling across the
votre
border.
gouvernement pense encore?
Is that something that your government is considering?
Très clair sur le besoin de
As you
plus grand
know,
nombre possible de gens de se
we've
faire
been
vacciner.
very clear
On a amené
that we need as
des
many
mandats
people
de
as possible
vaccination
to get
pour la
vaccinated.
fonction publique fédérale.
We've brought in
On
vaccine
a amené des
mandates
mandats de
for
vaccination
federal
pour
public
ceux qui
servants,
veulent voyager à bord d'un
for
avion,
those who want to travel
Nous
by
allons
airplane
continuer
or by train,
d'encourager les
and we
gens
will
de se
continue
faire
to encourage
vacciner.
people
Pour
to get
l'instant,
vaccinated.
les mandats pour les camionneurs s'appliquent à la
For the
frontière
moment,
canado-américaine.
The mandate for trucker only applies to the U.S.-Canada border.
Et donc, mais je voulais savoir, est-ce que
Follow-up
c'est quelque chose
question.
qui est encore sur la table?
Is this something that's still on the
Et si c'est
table?
encore sur la table, pensez-vous que ça risque de jeter
And
de l'huile
if
sur
it
le feu?
is, do you not think that this might add fuel to the flame?
Aller trop loin dans des hypothétiques. On
Answer.
est en train de regarder,
I don't want to
d'amener
speculate
des
here.
mesures concrètes
We are bringing
qui vont
forward
continuer
concrete
de protéger
measures
les Canadiens.
that will protect
Et quand on
Canadians.
pense que les camionneurs sont à
And when you consider that nearly 90% of truckers are already vaccinated,
on sait que même sans avoir
we know
des
that
mandats
even
supplémentaires, des
without
mandats
additional
domestiques,
mandates,
les gens sont en train de faire la
domestic
bonne chose.
mandates,
Mais comme
most
vous
people are
savez,
doing the right thing.
depuis 2 ans, on a vu énormément de mesures
But as you
et
know, over the
de
last
choses
2
qu'on a dû
years,
faire auxquelles
we've
on
had to
n'aurait pas pu
do
s'imaginer
a lot of
il y a
things that
3-4
we never
ans.
would have
On va
imagined
continuer de
necessary
suivre
3
la
or 4 years
science. On va
ago.
continuer de faire tout ce qui
We
est
will
nécessaire pour
continue
garder les
to
gens
follow the
en
scientific
santé, en
advice and to do
sécurité.
everything that we
On
need
va se concentrer
to
sur
keep
les
people
mesures
safe
qu'on
and
est en train de
healthy.
faire
But
maintenant
we're going to focus
et
on
pas
those measures that we're working on
amener
now,
des théories hypothétiques
rather
sur les
than
prochaines étapes
speculating
qui
about
pourraient être
possible
nécessaires
next
ou
steps
peut-être
that may be possible in the future or may
Operator, next
not be.
question.
Operator, next question.
Thank you. Merci. Next question, Marika Walsh, the Globe and Mail. Please go ahead. Question, Marika Walsh, the Globe and Mail. Please go ahead.
Hi, Prime Minister. Thanks for taking our call today. I just want to follow up on, sorry, I'm trying to mute my phone. I'm just trying to follow up on some of your responses about the protesters. I understand the concerns around many of the actions for many of the protesters, but I'm wondering if you, as the Prime Minister, need to engage with the fears and the concerns that others in the crowd raise about the vaccine. There seems to be a real concern for many of them about the safety of that vaccine, and I'm wondering if you are avoiding addressing that by only focusing on the much more hateful and nefarious elements of the protest this weekend.
Marika, anyone who thinks that I haven't been talking about how safe vaccines are has been listening to everything I've been saying over the past 2 years. Vaccines are safe and effective. The way we get through this public health crisis, get back to the things we love, is by trusting science, by trusting the facts, by being there for each other, by stepping up for each other. We have been hearing people hesitant about getting vaccinated for well over a year now. And we have been reaching out to them community by community, individual by individual, at the highest level, but also in interpersonal contacts to reassure people that vaccines are safe and effective and that they are the way to get through this pandemic. So, yes, the concerns expressed by a few people gathered in Ottawa right now are not new, not surprising, are heard, but are a continuation of what we've unfortunately seen in disinformation and misinformation online, conspiracy theorists about microchips, about God knows what else that go with the tinfoil hats. We have been clear every step of the way that the work our frontline health workers, the work our scientists and researchers are doing, the people at Health Canada, the people working on these vaccines all around the world, is the work that will get us through this, get us back to the things we love.
Operator, last question.
Thank you. Merci. Donc, la dernière question, Michel Sabat, la presse canadienne. La
Final
parole
question
est à vous.
from la presse canadienne.
Oui, bonjour, M. Trudeau.
Yes.
Avez-vous retenu un quelconque message de ces 3 journées de manifestation
What message have you taken away from this 3-day historic protest on the Hill? And have you taken away anything that would
c'est que oui,
lead you to change your position on
qui
anything?
hésitent encore à se faire vacciner. Mais en même
What we've
temps,
seen is that yes, there are
dans la
people who have
réaction des
hesitated to get
Canadiens d'un bout à
vaccinated.
l'autre,
But at the same time,
pas seulement
we know that
aux
Canadians
expressions de haine et d'intolérance qu'on a
across
vues
the country
parmi ces manifestants, mais aussi dans le message.
are against the hateful messages that we've seen.
Les Canadiens sont en train de dire, moi, ma liberté, c'est la liberté de retourner à des choses
The protesters
que je
are
voulais
talking
faire
about
avant, et la
freedom.
façon d'assumer cette liberté, c'est de se
Canadians
faire vacciner.
know that
Moi, mon choix,
freedom means getting back
c'est
to
d'être là
the things
les uns
that they
pour les
used
autres,
to
parce que c'est
enjoy,
comme
and the way to be able
qu'on
to
a
do that
créé
is to
ce
get
pays.
vaccinated.
C'est en étant là les uns pour les autres
The way that we
qu'on
built this
définit
country was by
ce que c'est
being
d'être
there for each
Canadien.
other. That's what defines
Alors, en
what
même
being
temps
Canadian is.
petite minorité marginalisée est en train de,
So
de
while this fringe minority
de manifester,
is
la
protesting,
vaste majorité des
the
Canadiens
vast majority of
sont en train de
Canadians
dire, ben voyons donc,
are thinking,
c'est en
come
continuant
on.
d'être là les uns pour les autres qu'on va passer à travers. On est tous
It's
d'accord.
by continuing to be there for each other that we
On
will
veut en
get through
finir
this
avec cette
pandemic.
pandémie.
We all want to be done with this pandemic.
Mais la grande majorité des Canadiens
But the vast majority of
savent très
Canadians
bien que la façon
very well
qu'on va en finir,
that the way out
c'est pas en manifestant
is
contre la
not
pandémie,
protesting the pandemic.
en se faisant vacciner.
It's getting vaccinated.
Following up.
Les abords du Parlement, M. Trudeau, les abords du Parlement sont-ils sécuritaires et les policiers devraient-ils
Is the parliamentary
évacuer cette
precinct safe,
J'ai
and do we
énormément
need more
confiance
police
dans
presence?
nos services de sécurité publique.
I have enormous
qui font un
faith
travail
in
remarquable
our
dans des situations
public
extrêmement
safety,
difficiles. Je veux remercier
our law
la
enforcement.
police d'Ottawa,
I want
la
to thank
GRC,
the Ottawa
le service de
Police, the
protection
RCMP,
parlementaire
the Parliamentary
et
Protective
tous
Services,
ceux qui ont
and
travaillé
everyone
avec
who
acharnement cette fin de
has
semaine
worked
pour
so
s'assurer
hard this weekend
de minimiser
to
les
ensure
dégâts
that any
et l'harcèlement et
damage,
l'intimidation des citoyens.
harassment and intimidation would be limited in
C'est
Ottawa.
pas fini, mais ils vont continuer de faire leur job.
Of course, things are not
je
over
sais que
yet,
les
but these
Canadiens
people will
à travers
continue
le
to do
pays
their work, and I know
peuvent
that
avoir
Canadians
confiance,
across the country
dans ceux qui choisissent de servir
trust that
le
these
bien du
people
public.
will serve the public good.
Operator, would it be possible to put Marika Walsh on the line? She didn't get her follow-up.
Perfect. Thank you. And we don't have Marika Walsh in the queue anymore. I'm sorry.
Thank you. This is what ends today's press conference.
Merci tout le monde.
Thank you, everyone.
USOB.